Hey everyone, Jim and Chris back, and we have a special guest for this video. Becky has been with us for years and is our Senior VP over all property management. Becky, thanks for joining us for one of our classic chats. And Becky's been a big part of our entire company because, as you know, with Build to Rent, one of the most important things that we do for our community is the rental side. And we've worked through some incredible strategies over the years in order to keep filling. You know, when we're doing thousands of properties, we want to make sure we can not only build them, but rent them. So we're going to discuss a couple of new marketing strategies we think are going to really help with the rest of Q1 and Q2 for the properties that we're working with. Becky, one thing that I wanted to say first off is great job on Palm Coast.
Thank you.
So I'm sure a lot of you know, if you didn't watch the video, the last videos that we did, you can look in the library. Palm Coast actually became a case study for us for being able to adjust and adapt and overcome in short-term market conditions that we're really happy to report. Do you guys remember what happened? I mean, we're talking back September of 2023. Just kind of recap what happened, because you guys are the mastermind on this. I sit on another side of the business, but you two always work together on this.
You want to do that part?
I'll start and I'll let you take over. So we had an influx of properties based on completion timeframes. So we had a lot more on the market than we were prepared for. And with that, we had to pick a different strategy on how to take those properties down. I think we're at 80 properties, right?
I think it was 85.
85.
85 units on the ground ready to rent in Palm Coast. And we had to make a couple changes.
Absolutely. We had to play to what the prospects were seeing and what they wanted. So we noticed that there were too many options on the market, that they didn't know what to pick. They all are the same model, which is what we're doing. And for them, it was just overwhelming with the same price, multiple models, a little bit different of an area. So what we did was a false scarcity effect, which we have done prior as well, and reduced what was posted on the market to allow certain options and allow us to flow inventory that way, along with different marketing strategies for different campaigns, different graphics, a few little changes on socials, and that allowed us to go down to, I think the lowest was 7.
Maybe 7 or 8.
Maybe 7.
So within a few short months, again, stabilization is something Chris and I always talk about. It's an important part of this overall strategy, but it's just the beginning part. And we are always fighting for new ways to stabilize the properties with the best tenants. Sometimes we've been filling as quick as a week. Other times there can be a longer stabilization. But what Becky and Chris did was reassess, and within a few short months we went from 85 units down to 7 or 8 units. I don't remember the exact ones. So we're always trying to strategize and look at the market conditions. And how do you guys actually come up with this data? Because it's not just easy to find out. You guys really dig deep into find out these facts. How do you guys do this in these meetings?
Well, and I'll let Becky answer that. But the other important point to make on Palm Coast is right now we're sitting at 12. So this is, we've been able to maintain this low level of inventory going forward after we were able to work our way through, that extremely high level of inventory for us in that market. But Becky, I'll turn to you on, how do you find the data that you're working with?
Yeah, how did you guys find this? Because you were completely right. We put a strategy in, and then the results were there. How are you seeing this? And this was months ahead. You guys can go back and look at the videos when we called this and did the first video and then the updated victory video. How did you find this data, though? What are you looking at?
So we look at numerous factors. The main thing is I like to look at it from a prospect's point of view. What are they experiencing? So I go online and act as just them. Can I find the property? What do I see? How do I feel? What would I do in the situation? And at first I looked at it and I was like, wow, I don't even know where to start. They all look the same. They're all in Palm Coast. I don't know where to select what's the best option. And I kind of just left it. For me, that allowed me to postpone the decision because I know there's options. I know if I take a minute that maybe there'll be less options that'll help me pick. So whenever that happened, I noticed, okay, maybe they're kind of thinking the same manner, that they just don't know what to do. So what we did is we lowered those and added different specials on particular properties, ones that may be backed up to different home, different reasons to allow attraction to grow. And with doing that, we saw a peak in applications and interest. There wasn't as many. We were able to compete more. It was these great properties. They're still the same. Everything was the same other than the amount on the market.
I love that.
And when we made that change, we saw that difference and kept going at it. And then as we did that, we generated people. And at that point, their property would go off the market that they applied for. No problem. We have another. So we contact them, and that's how we were able to get to 7 or 8 properties.
Which is something we experimented with way back. Remember years ago with Marietta Estates, one of that West Side communities,
Yeah.
and we had that done in 6 weeks. So you had already tested this before, but I think that goes back to the old saying, when you have 1,000 choices, you have no choices.
Absolutely.
People get that absolute confusion, and so we pulled back. And it worked perfectly. And I think, like you said, you're always assessing what's going through our tenant, our prospective leasee's head. And right now there's a conversation going through the head of why we're changing up our marketing. What is kind of the conversation that's going on in their head right now that we're seeing, because we have to get their attention? And you're figuring out, what are you seeing now for what we're going to go into for the new strategy?
Yeah, what I see now is the question of, can I afford to move in? So the prospects can afford the monthly rental rate. They know what they can handle, but it's a lot to move in. They're planning the first month's rent, the deposit, a moving truck, different expenses, other things in their lives that we don't know what's happening as well. So that's the question, and that's what we're seeing is they want to move forward. They're placing the applications. They're getting approved, but they cannot move forward in the beginning. The expenses are just too high for them. And that's where we generate this idea of what's another option that we can do. So we want to be able to allow them an option, follow through the normal process, or a flat fee, allowing them a lower deposit amount, but instead of doing a deposit, we made our own twist on it, and it's a fee, allowing them to pay that, goes straight to the owner, which is great benefit for them, and it allows us to compete. If you go online, look at the apartment complexes that we're competing with, $500 everywhere.
Yeah.
Looked at a few today, plastered all over their websites. That's what we're competing with from their viewpoint. Our product is much different. It is like a single family product, but that's what they see. And they can do 500 or our requirements now. And unfortunately, that's where they sometimes make that decision where they have to go with a competitor. They may not like that property. They may want our property more, but they have to make a choice. And when we ran some numbers, we saw 33% from approval are not converting.
So I think that's an important point.
That's a real important point.
So from so somebody has an approved application, which means that they qualify from an income perspective, they qualify from a background perspective, and they qualify from a credit perspective. And you're sending them a package that says you are approved to move into this home, and they're saying 33% of them are saying I don't want to move forward.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's a much higher ratio than we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
Of not moving forward.
Yep.
Well, we know this. This is one of the old adages, how much down, how much a month. And our investors, you guys understand this. When you're buying a property with you, say, well, how much am I going to put in? What's my initial investment? And how much am I going to rent them for a month? Tenants look at it the same way. What is that initial down to get into the property, that initial deposit, and then what is the monthly? And the feedback, as you just so elegantly shared, it's not the monthly. It's the move-in. It's that amount.
Yeah.
And when the competition, which the good thing is we know, especially through the pandemic, the competition has not been very happy with us because we are such a better choice. We know that 95% of the time, if someone can live in a duplex or in a large apartment community for similar numbers, they're going to pick our properties.
Yeah.
Better neighborhoods, closer to schools, all sorts of things. They're a little more spread out, which we know became very popular. So that is what you pinpointed it down,
Yeah.
which you and I faced in many times. A lot of you know that Chris and I, we used to do bulk foreclosures. We used to renovate older homes in a lot of the neighborhoods we build in now or close by. And when we were doing these so fast, and they're in good condition, solid areas, but there was a lot coming on the market as that foreclosure outflux was coming from the banks. So what we did was exactly this, and we were moving dozens and dozens of properties. We were still, and I want you to go over that, Becky, we were still doing very strong background checks and credit checks and requirements, but we were sacrificing that deposit up front to get a strong tenant in there to be able to keep filling the properties at better pace. And that's basically what we're trying to do here.
Well, and that's right. So I mean, bottom line, if you take one of our quadruplex units that's say renting for $1,400 a month, we're now saying you can pay your normal $1,400 a month deposit, and if the property looks great when you leave, you get your $1,400 deposit back. Alternatively, you could pay a one-time flat fee of $700 up front, which immediately goes to the owner, and you don't get that back. It's just gone. Now, as a landlord myself, important thing I want to know is if they do damage the property, are they still responsible for it?
Absolutely. They're still going to be charged. Normal process with that. With the deposit, there's just funds being held to put against it. But in this case, they still had the same process. We still do the move-out walk. We're going to assess the damages. We're going to charge them for it, and they'd have to pay that. So that's a decision the process has to make in the beginning. Do I have money saved up for when that happens and I have to pay for the expenses?
Yeah. So good credited people can still have us as an option instead of an apartment complex because we're matching that deposit requirement with the cheaper things they're offering, but they're getting the better property for the same monthly rent. So we're not looking to lower that monthly, just that upfront deposit, which the way we're structuring will actually put more cash flow in the pockets of our owners and still give a level of safety as well. And one of the levels of safety, when we were first strategizing this, after you guys brought the idea, was when Chris and I were doing the old houses back in the day, our average tenancy was 13 months. That was it. It was 13 months. It was always about a year, and then that last month they'd move out, so we'd get about 13 months. Now, our average tenancy, I believe from the last reports you put out, just over 3 years.
Right.
So we're at like
34
37 months. 37 months. So the way we looked at it when Becky and Chris brought this up, and again, we're always going to be strategizing. We've told you guys this. It is our job doing the markets in Florida that we do to always be strategizing and adjusting. We said if we can match the down payments or deposit in this case to be lower, keep the rents at that higher rate to get you guys the cash flow, we know we have a longer tenancy history right now with our new construction. So looking out 3 years, that gives a really good positioning for the overall, again, stabilization is so important. We felt this was the best and safest way to do it, and also be able to get inventory moving at a quicker pace, because we're always trying, just similar to Palm Coast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a limited time offer is what we're planning for this. It's based on the market right now. This is not a permanent change. We see the market calling for us to make a change, and that's what we're trying to do here, to convert that 33%, see what we can do to give them an option to move forward to allow us to lower those days vacant for the owners.
Well, and now is the right time to do it as well. You know, and you mentioned this earlier. You know, right now we're in tax season. You know, starting somewhere around February 1st, you know, January 15th to February 1st is when we start to see leasing season come into full swing. And then as the leasing season being where we see, significantly more applications and significantly more deposits. And so, you know, we're seeing that increase this year, but it's not as pronounced as we had expected. And, you know, some of that might be, we've heard there's delays in people getting their tax return checks back.
Absolutely.
But, you know, it's not as pronounced as we had hoped it would be at this point in time in the year. And so, you know, we know that we've got, you know, competitors out there doing these lower move-in specials, but we, you know, which is why we need to do something right now, because for the rest of March and April, when people are getting these tax return checks, we want to make sure that we're getting more than our market share's worth to fill up any of these homes that have been at, you know, longer lease-up times. You know, in COVID, we were at a 12-day lease-up time when our average was 30. That's what we've always said is 30.
Right.
Well, now we've got some houses that are up over 60 days, and it's making us uncomfortable where, you know, we feel like we need to make this change right now for a short period of time, and ultimately it's going to put more cash flow in the investor's pocket. So, you know, in two ways. You know, one you mentioned is they get the fee up front. So the tenant pays that fee. It's not a deposit. It goes straight to the owner. But then secondarily, you've got additional rent. You know, so that's the way to look at, okay, well, maybe we left $700 of deposit on the table, meaning that we didn't get it. But if we lease the property for 30 days sooner, well, you actually made $1,400 more than you would have otherwise made.
Absolutely.
Because we were able to lease it sooner. So, you know, this is not a decision that, you know, we take lightly. Obviously, we're here talking about it. But it's something that we feel is the right move in the market today, where we feel that there are more properties on the market at the moment. And we've said this in other videos. I think 2024 we're going to see a little bit more inventory on the market because of the inventory that completed, you know, the new construction that completed at the end of 2023 that was held up from COVID. But, you know, we're going to see that, you know, work itself out here in 2024. But then 2025, we're going to go back to a pretty significant shortage because nobody's starting new apartment complexes right now because the interest rates are so high. So the starts on these apartment complexes are significantly down. So I say all that to say, to Becky's point, we see this as a short-term problem it's still a problem nonetheless that we need to address immediately.
Yeah. The good news is we've been here before. We go through these things. There's always these ebbs and flows. It's part of real estate investing. Chris and I have seen it for over 20 years. And the things we're talking about have been proven to work. We did it way back with the fixer-upper foreclosures. I recommend if you didn't see the Palm Coast case study, go back and watch that video because we did, a really solid job of identifying it ahead of time, putting a plan into action, and then seeing the results, which is exactly what we're doing here. So watch for this on your properties. If you're currently closing on properties or you have a property in the market, we know by sacrificing some deposit up front, we can keep the requirements high to be able to move in, attract a tenant, especially with this delayed tax refund season, which is usually our best of the year. And then we're looking, again, right now at a really good track record for a longer tenancy. And that puts you in a really good position. So we just always like to share these messages. Again, go back and watch some of the old videos if you haven't. It really should give you some reassurance of how we come up with these strategies and what our team is doing for you. But please reach out to your portfolio managers. Any questions, we're here for you. Anything we can do for you, we wanted to let you know the strategy and lay it all out for you. And we're looking forward to see it unwind and do our next victory video like we did for Palm Coast. So we'll talk to you guys again soon. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.